Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we have the meta snapshot for patch 14.2. Couple of changes from last week because there are a couple of new comps that got discovered and a couple of interactions that work really well. But it is still a reroll patch. Jarvan is going to be king, Vayne is going to be king, and there's also different ways to play the rerolls that I think everyone should be knowing. But let's just get right into this. We'll cover all the good comps right now, how I suggest approaching the patch. So if you're a beginner or if you've been playing TFT for a bit but are maybe a little lost on what to play on the current patch, this is going to be the video for you. So in the S tier, Vayne Reroll and Exotech, no doubt about that. If you get Hollow Bow on Zeri, you could just auto force it in a lot of cases because you really only need like one specific item on her. So always check your Exotech in the early game. Vayne Reroll, no surprise there, but the rolling patterns are going to be a bit different from the previous week because Jarvan is going to be the main carry and Vayne is just Vayne. I mean, she's still good, but Jarvan's kind of the star here. After that, we have Vex. I moved Vex to the top of A tier because it's a great ability powered default comp. So if you ever have a tier at the start, or if you have like Hyper Fangs or Hollow Bow, you could go the Vex Exotech comp. Cypher, great cash out comp if you get it early, and you could play anything with it. The most popular comps to play are going to be either Exotech or like Vex Exotech, and then something like Street Demon, anything with good late game potential. After that, we have Veigar Reroll, a good reroll comp if you have a tier. Twisted Fate, if Vayne's contested and you have a Rage Blade, go Twisted Fate. It's not as good, but it's still gonna get you some dubs or top fours here and there. Street Demon, it's gonna be a very high roll comp. If you have an amazing start, go for Street Demons with Brand Carry, Ziggs secondary, Executioner reroll. If you get early Rengars, go for this. There's the Street Demon, there's the Executioner version, and there's a Divinicorp version. I think the Street Demon version is probably gonna be the better one right now, but whatever units you're hitting, that's what you're gonna play. Shaco Reroll, if you get an early Shaco, that's what you're gonna go for. So these are the top S and A tier comps. That's what I recommend playing in like 90-95% of your games. If you have to, or if you get some crazy augment combo, the B tier, that's where they're gonna shine. Believe it or not, like B tier comps, a lot of people write them off, but there are gonna be 5% games where you have to play some of these. Not have to, but like you want to play some of these. For example, on Bruiser Fiddlesticks, Bruisers are gimped because Cho'Gath got nerfed way too hard, but if you get like Sniper's Focus Fiddlesticks or Blighting Jewel Fiddlesticks, it makes it worth playing. Nitro, if you are on a portal, which gives the hack of 2-star units show up in your shop, then Nitro Reroll with Jhin or Nefari is going to be pretty good. So there are a lot of weird situations where a lot of these other B tier comps are going to be good. But let's get into how to play each and every one of these comps. We're going to go over all the A tiers, and starting off with Vayne. It's a Vayne comp, but you want to do a 3-cost reroll. That's the big difference between this week and last week, because everyone knew Jarvan was really strong, but he is so strong that he matters more than Vayne. Like some games I see people, they only have a 2-star Vayne, but they have 3-star Jarvan, and then sometimes a 3-star Senna as well. Like obviously you still want 3-star Vayne, it's just that Jarvan's more important. My favorite part about Jarvan is that he uses any item imaginable, whether it's a tank or damage item, which is another really good thing about him. So you could be building Rage Blades every single carousel for your Vayne, and then after that, whatever leftover items you have, there is a way to make stuff buildable for Jarvan. So that's another really good thing about this comp. That's why I think this comp is in the S tier compared to the other reroll comps, because Jarvan's very flexible, Jarvan's very strong, and there are a lot of like crazy things that can make this comp shine really well. One example is with augments. Category 5, Runon's Hurricane on Vayne is incredible, and oddly enough, Into the Night with Edge of Night on Vayne is another extremely good combo. Let's check out the data really quickly. If we look at items and then Edge of Night, you'll see it does 3.5, whereas normally she does 3.79, which is really good still. But like Edge of Night, you don't want to build it just regularly. You have to do it with Into the Night because that's where the main power comes from, because this augment gives her a lot of attack speed and it gives her a ton of survivability, which is really good against AoE or like backline assassin compositions. So those are examples of like 2 really good augments that maybe you haven't tried before. I think the Edge of Night one is pretty good. You could also do Edge of Night on Twisted Fate, as we'll talk about later. It's not as good as this version, but it's still decent. But pretty much whenever you get this comp, you either want to be uncontested and take combat augments or item augments or trait augments, or if you are contested, take a reroll augment such as Pandora's Bench, Starry Night, and that way you could get the Vayne 3-star if people try to contest you. So always scout around, like make sure you're uncontested. Like sometimes I know it's unlucky where you could get contested and you get screwed over, but it is what it is. But what I want you all to do is do a level 7 reroll instead of level 6, again, because Jarvan is more important. So you want to get to level 7 as soon as possible, but you still do a level 6 stabilization if you need. So On stage 3 too, you normally go to level 6 there. I recommend still doing that, and then roll for Vayne 2 and a 2-star tank, assuming you're low health, and that way you can preserve your health during stage 3. If you're like 100 health or like 90 plus health on stage 3 though, you could just save your gold, lose a few rounds, get to level 7 a little faster, and then roll there to stabilize. That happens at either stage 3, 5, or 4, 1. But if you're low, if you lose streaked in the beginning of the game, definitely stabilize on 3, 2. You cannot forget to do this, because if not, you'll just start the game after hitting your comp with like 20 health or like 30 health, and that's not good. But yeah, we have the emblem versions over here, level 8 versions over here. Nothing too complicated. Jarvan, I know I said his items are pretty flexible, but generally you want on your team some form of armor penetration, so that could be Even Shroud or a Last Whisper on Senna. And then you want some form of anti-heal with either a Sunfire Cape or a red buff. Either champion, doesn't really matter, right? And then of course like the double Rage Blade, Giant Slayer on Vayne, things like that. Pretty much Senna is going to be your utility, but she also does damage too if you have like only damage items, right? Or if you have all the utility on Jarvan. And then Jarvan takes any items, you just want to make sure you have 3 of them. And then Vayne does a double Rage Blade, Giant Slayer combo. Next one up we have is Exotech. So just check your Exotech early on in the game, every game. See if you have Hollow Bow. If you do, you can go for the Zeri comp. She's so strong with it. And if you get Hollow Bow plus Pulse Stabilizer, you could even put both of them on Zeri. Pulse Stabilizer is essentially just like a better Infinity Edge. So you could do Rage Blade, Hollow Bow plus Pulse Stabilizer. All the tank ones go on Sejuani. Make sure you get Protector's Vow on Sejuani, by the way, when you're playing this comp, because it's such a good item on her and it uses up awkward components. And she'll end up casting really early into the fight. And sometimes she even casts twice with Adaptive Helm and Protector's Vow, or if you have Innervating Locket, she can be very annoying to enemy backlines. I've had one of my backline units perma-stunned by a Sejuani with Vow and Adaptive Helm, because as soon as her stun resolved, she actually loaded up enough mana to stun my unit in the back again, which was very annoying, and I ended up losing that round. So mana items are the name of the game on Sejuani. It doesn't happen all the time where she does a stun lock, it's very rare, but like, it's crazy how that can even happen. After that, cap out your late game with Aurora, bring in units such as like Urgot, Zac, Kabuko, things that stun or have like some utility. And you could also drop down to 5 Exotech in order to fit in better units. So you take out Nefari and Jax, or either Nefari and Varus, and play 5 costs instead. Stuff like Garen, Zac, Kabuko, anything you could think of. If they're 5 costs, they're going to be very good. But this comp's pretty simple to play. Just get 1 Rage Blade. You don't need it in the very beginning, but once you do get Zeri, you use it. So it's one of those comps where you don't need to sack your early game in order to get a bow or rod component on Carousel for the Rage Blade, because Jhin uses different items than Zeri, and Jin's going to be your main item holder in the early game. So as long as you get a Rage Blade eventually, Zeri is going to be fine. The most important thing is just having Hollow Bow. That's really all that matters. As for augments, you want item augments, because Exotech units work really well when they have more items, because the more items they have on them, the more health and attack speed that they get. So always 3 item your Exotech units. If you get a Thieves Glove, even better. If you get like stuff like Cybernetic Implants, Cybernetic Bulk, even Cybernetic Uplink work pretty decently, because again, you should have a lot of items spread around. You get the bonus items from the Exotech trait, so there's literally just no reason not to get more items. But pretty decent comp. Just check your Exotech item in the beginning and then decide to hard force it, and you can be contested. Like, if there are 2 people playing this, perfectly fine. But those are the S tier comps. Moving on into the A tier, we have Exotech Vex. This is going to be a 3 or 5 Exo build. It depends if you have a good item on your Exotech, or if you could reach the late game pretty easily. It's best with either Hyper Fangs or Hollow Bow on the Varus. Varus is actually so good, it's crazy. Like, I've seen 2-star Varus compete in DPS with my Vex, that's 2-star, and Vex is a 4 cost, Varus is a 3 cost. And he could have utility items such as Red Buff and Static Shiv, which is hilarious, right? Like, it's just such a good unit. And I think he's probably one of the most underrated units, like maybe a week ago. Like, now everyone knows he's good, but a week ago, maybe people were kind of skipping out on him, because he's kind of sometimes the odd man out in the Exotech builds. Like in the one with Zeri, like we don't even itemize him. You itemize Jhin instead. But it is what it is. In this build, he is completely bonkers nuts. It's actually incredible. But yeah, in 5 Exotech, this is probably the version you're going to play more often because it's cheaper. So you reach this much easier at level 8. This is going to be with some Divinicorp. You do Gragas, Morgana, and obviously Vex. And then you just bring in the 5 Exotech, and they have a lot of complementary traits, so it's pretty good. It might feel weird playing a Morgana because she's going to be in both versions of this build, because normally when you drop down to lower trait numbers, you replace crappy units with legendaries, but the way Divinicorp works is that with Morgana, she gives ability power to your team, and since you're mainly an ability power comp, even though she's a 1-cost, she's often worth to put in. That way Vex gets a lot more power. For Vex, I like blue buff, Rabadon's Death Cap, and Guardbreaker. You could also build Hextech Gunblade on her, Hand of Justice. Vex is a little weird. Her ability makes her get Omnivamp, and when she overheals, she deals true damage. Does that mean you always need it? I don't think so. But what I like about it is that it makes the item build really, really flexible because you could use all sorts of different stuff on her. Let's check out the Explorer tool actually with Vex. So we have the blue buff on her, we have 3 or 5 Exotech, and when we look at the items like Hextech Gunblade, Guardbreaker, good, do not build Jeweled Gauntlet, Giant Slayer's okay, Rabadon's okay, and then Nashor's Tooth bad, Archangel okay, not that great, and then it kind of goes down from there. So, but there also is like Hand of Justice down here, 4.22. It's pretty good because it kind of does the same thing as Hextech Gunblade. Let's increase the rank a little bit. Pretty much whatever item you can slam, that's going to be the item you want to build, because the earlier you build an item, the better it's going to be. But any of those items work, to be honest. The only thing that's like absolutely mandatory is going to be the blue buff, and then the next item I prioritize is probably going to be the Guardbreaker. After that, on your main tank Sejuani, you get the Vow on her, you put random Exotech items on her if you have them. If not, just put whatever leftover tank items you can, and yeah, it's going to be okay, right? If you have too many items, you could itemize either Mordekaiser or Gragas. If you're 5 Exotech, I prefer the Mordekaiser. If you're 3 Exotech, you could either do like a legendary such as Zac or Garen, but if you don't have any of those, worst case, you could just do Gragas instead. So how do you go from like top 4ing with a 5 Exotech comp to getting a lot of wins? Well, obviously it's going to be putting in a lot of legendaries into your team. So like with the 3 Exotech version, you're able to fit a lot more units in there, and I have a list of units down here that you could play. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different legendaries you could try, and all of them fit in the build, so it's very nice to do and easy to slot in. And in terms of augments, the really, really broken ones are going to be Blue Battery, because it gives you so much power on your Vex, and then also Board of Directors also gives you so much power on your Vex. If you have Board of Directors, you can only run 3 Divinicorp, so maybe just play the 5 Exotech version or play the 3 Exotech, but don't add in Renekton. But I don't think I've seen anyone do badly with this comp with Board of Directors, assuming they actually hit a Vex 1 at a reasonable time and then Vex 2 at a reasonable time as well. Completely bonkers comp if you get it. By the way, I like positioning Vex towards the middle and Varus on the edge, because I think her AoE hits a little better when she's in the middle of the map, but obviously if there's Sejuanis on the other team, you still want to try to avoid them and dodge them. So if they have a Sejuani, move her to the corner. If they don't, leave her in the middle. Next build up we have is going to be the Cypher build. Cypher is so complicated because it's like, is there a Cypher build? Yeah, there is a Cypher build. It's like Draven 3 and he kind of cleans everything, right? But when you play Cypher, you don't need Cypher units, so it's a little hard to play in that sense. So if you're a beginner, I don't recommend playing Cypher that often, but if you want to have like a lot of fun, I do recommend it. Pretty much all you have to do is lose streak with Cyphers in the early game, and then typically on stage 3-7, that's when you do your cash out. If you got a life augment such as Tiniest Titans or Littlest Legend, or I forget what it's called, Titanic Legend or something like that, then you can possibly do the 4-3 cash out. But essentially when you do it, you can either play the Cypher comp, which you see here with Bastions, or you could play any of the Fast 8, Fast 9 comps such as Exotech, either the Zeri or the Vex version, or the Street Demon comp that we'll get into in just a bit. Those are going to be the main options there because it just gives you a lot of resources to use, and you can just use that to really beef your team up. But if you're playing like with Cyphers, if you get a Draven cash out, like sometimes they give you copies of champions, then obviously go for that, right? You don't want to like switch to something else. But most important thing is to just lose streak in the early game. That's really all that matters. And what that means is griefing your positioning, because there are other players who might have Cypher or people who are just trying to lose streak in general. So if we clear this board here, let's type in the Cyphers. Who do we have? We have Vi, let's say LeBlanc, and maybe you have like a Galio or something like that, right? Draven's technically better, so we'll start with him. So what you can do is kind of trap your Vi. That way you pretty much guarantee losing. It takes something really ridiculous to win. So this is going to be an ideal setup. But if you have Galio instead of the Draven, what you can do instead is just like split up your backline and then put LeBlanc in front of wherever the enemy team is. So if they have melees on like these 2 hexes, you could put her there. If they have them in the middle, put her in the middle. If they have them on the left, put her on the left. And that way it pretty much helps guarantee you losing. Obviously, if they're complete griefers such as open forters, you can't really do much about that. You keep the Cyphers in, you just have to play around a smaller bonus. It's really all there is to it. And then in stage 3, you want to build some items, but not too many, just to make sure you could kill a couple of units. That way you have a little more life to play with once you do the cash out on 3-7. But next comp up we have is Veigar Reroll. Veigar is an interesting comp. You want the blue buff. That's the main reason to go for this. Pretty much if you start the game and you have a Veigar or maybe 2 Veigar and you have a tier, you can hard force this. Another good augment is like the Cyber Boss augment. It's like new high score or something like that. And that's going to be an incredibly good augment because you could start farming it from the beginning. If anyone remembers like the arcade trait from before, it's pretty much that. It wasn't called arcade, it was called something else. But essentially, like the more damage you do, you load up like your high score and then it unlocks a bunch of loot every time you reach a new threshold. But to play this comp, you just need Veigar 3-star, put some items on him, find a 3-star tank. It could be either Poppy, Shyvana, sometimes Mordekaiser. Sometimes I go 4 Bastion with Jax and Sejuani. Lots of different options there, to be honest with you. And then you could also add in more techies if you have a lot of space. So if you build a Gunblade, I recommend building a stronger front line. If you have blue buff, Jeweled Gauntlet plus Guardbreaker, then the front line is not as important. The reason why is because when you do have like 4 Bastion in, for example, the Hextech Gunblade is worth a lot more because you have a lot more resistances on your front line. So you get a lot more value from the healing that it gives to your team. Meanwhile, the Burstier build of Veigar, which is blue buff, Jeweled Gauntlet plus Guardbreaker, you don't need tankiness as much. You just want to blow things as quickly as possible, and you don't need to worry about too much stuff. Speaking of items on Veigar, let's go over some of them. So we have, let's do Diamond Plus for this one. Pretty much you just want to make sure you have enough games in. Like doing only Challenger is a little risky because sometimes there aren't enough games played on it. But obviously like blue buff's absolutely required. Some people like Nashers, I like it too, but I think Jeweled Gauntlet is going to be the best item. It's not because like the stats or anything, it's just like critting is just so important because it adds a lot of damage to him when he needs to take down a tank. And then third item, it could either be like Nashers, Hextech Gunblade. I've seen people do blue buff and Shojin. I don't really like it that much, but in a worst case scenario, it's going to be pretty decent. Giant Slayer is going to be okay. Rabadon's Death Cap going to be pretty good too. One little thing, I know people might say like, oh, maybe you don't want a Death Cap because it gives a lot of ability power and he gets so much ability power from Techies and Cyber Boss. Well, it gives a lot of AP, but it also gives some damage amp, which is pretty nice. So that's pretty much the stat that you're really looking after. Like, as you can see, like Archangels, which pretty much only gives AP, is not that great. Like 4.37, you don't really want that on him. But Hat's okay because, again, sometimes you take Rod off Carousel because you can use a lot of different rods in this comp. And sometimes if you get too many, you might have to build a Death Cap, but it's still fine because it gives damage amp. So one thing I've noticed a lot about this build is that having a lot of items is pretty good because you have so many units to itemize. You don't need 3-star Poppy, like she's optional, she could be 2-star. But if you do get her 3-star, if you get Shyvana 3-star, you have Kabuko, you have Viego, you have Ziggs, you have like 5 potential units to itemize. And I found that getting those like weird item augments such as like Scavenger, when you kill things, you get an item onto your other units for the first 5 kills in a game, they're pretty good because you have a lot of units who can use them. So do keep that in mind when you are playing this. I tend to like it when there are a lot of items in the game because the other units do a lot of work as well. Like the front line's pretty tanky because they pretty much all have good traits. And then Viego is Viego, Ziggs is Ziggs, they're all pretty good stuff. Like Ziggs, you put your utility on, you could put like Static Shiv and Morellonomicon. Viego gets like Edge of Night, Jeweled Gauntlet, and whatever else you can fit on him, and they all work really well with it. Like 1-star Viego is still good. Like for a 5 cost, it's like very solid. Next one up we have is going to be the Twisted Fate reroll build. We were gonna say that if you go for Vayne and you have a Rage Blade, and then other people are going for Vayne, you just go into a Twisted Fate build instead. His items are going to be double Rage Blade plus a Hextech Gunblade. And whenever you're on Carousel, you pretty much just take rods. You could use like infinite rods in this comp. You could build like Ionic Spark with it to get Magic Pen. You could build the 2 Rage Blades. You could build the Hextech Gunblade. If you don't have Ionic Spark, like obviously you want the Static Shiv in the backline. Like pretty much for every single comp that exists in TFT, you need anti-heal and you need armor or magic penetration, depending on what units you play. So like no matter what comp picture you're looking at, always add that into your team in some way. It doesn't matter which. It could be either on the front line holding it or the back line. It literally doesn't matter. You just need it in some form or way. But just keep that in mind when you're like looking at any guide, because sometimes it's not possible to put it on like every single comp, because like what is like the best item? It's like if you already have a red buff and Sunfire Cape is normally the best item, like you don't want to build a Sunfire Cape. right? You want like a Warmogs instead, or like a Bramble or Dragonclaw on your tank, or a Redemption. So that's one thing just to keep in mind whenever you are looking at things. But this build has a couple of different versions to play. I like the Divinicorp version the best with Gragas and Rhaast. And then I've seen some people re-roll Draven as well. You know how I said for Vayne you do like the level 7 roll down even though your main carries a 2 cost? For this comp you could do the level 7 roll down as well and go for like Braum, Draven, and Twisted Fate 3-star. I've seen that be done a couple of times. I think that way of playing it is getting a little more popular. You don't have to do it, I just want to list the option out there, because Draven is a crank at 3-star. You put an IE Shojin on him, he will be killing a lot of stuff. But for main tank, it's either going to be Darius or Braum, depending on who you 3-star. Either works, but you just put your hat on whoever's 3-star plus your Twisted Fate. In the early game, some people like doing getting rid of Rhaast and Draven and adding in the boom bots. They do Kog'Maw for rapid fire and Skarner for tankiness. Skarner's just like a very tanky unit in general this set, so a lot of people just like him as like a stat check. It's not because Boombot's good, it's just more so because Skarner's good, because obviously Boombot doesn't do that much for your team. But pretty much, again, play this comp when you have a Rageblade and can't go Vayne, or you have a bunch of Twisted Fates already, and yeah, you just reroll for it. You could do either level 6 or level 7, doesn't really matter, it just depends on how much gold you have. If you have like a ton of gold, I'd say do the level 7 one. If you don't have that much gold, if it's a regular game, do the level 6 because it's a lot cheaper to do. Oh, by the way, like the Edge of Night thing works on Twisted Fate as well. It's hilarious because with Into the Night, that augment's so good whenever you need a lot of attack speed, and if there's a lot of backline damage, like it works, right? It's not as good as on Vayne, obviously, because this one doesn't give ability power, this one gives AD. So on Vayne it is better, but I just want to let you know that it is an option. It's just not that broken. Like I wouldn't force Twisted Fate with that augment, but Vayne I might force it with that augment. But I'm just trying to like broaden your horizon a little bit. That reminds me, another item that works on Vayne is going to be a Quicksilver. So if you are in a game where you start with a Vayne 2-star, for example, or you get a lot of Vaynes and it's uncontested, but you have no Rageblade components, like have no fear. A Quicksilver is good enough to play on Vayne if you don't have the Rageblades. Like obviously you'd rather have the Rageblade. Like if I have an item anvil and I have a selection between Rageblade and Quicksilver, like I'm gonna build the Rageblade, right? But in games where you get a lot of Vaynes and you're like, this is a Vayne game, no one else is going for it, I have a ton of her, but I don't have Rageblade components, you could always build a Quicksilver on her and it's gonna be doing just fine. Like you can check the stats on it, it's pretty good. We'll do it right now. What did we say? Vayne with 3-star, and then you want a Quicksilver. Like, yeah, 3.69, like that's pretty good, right? Like obviously it's biased because you only build it when you don't have a Rageblade, but you have a lot of Vaynes, so keep that in mind. I don't think it's better than Rageblade because the number's lower. Like Rageblade's 3.76, Quicksilver is 3.69. Rageblade is still better in this case, but it's an option for when you get a ton of Vaynes without any components. Next build up we have is going to be Shaco Reroll. Literally only play this if you get an early Shaco with Infinity Edge, because without it, you will not kill stuff in the early game, and then he will be weak, and then he won't be able to farm in the late game. So that's pretty much the only time to play this. If you have like Edge of Night and 2-star Shaco, I might not play it, you know, because Edge of Night doesn't help him kill stuff. If you have Hand of Justice, maybe he could get away with it, but it's really the Infinity Edge Shaco in the early game. Slam that, or if you get an artifact item which helps him kill stuff, like yeah, use that instead. But unless you get some crazy Shaco start, without the IE, he's going to be pretty useless. So just keep that in mind when you play this. But you essentially just go into Slayers, you copy the Vayne build, you could itemize Jarvan as well if you get to him, but normally the Vayne players take him away, so it's kind of hard to go for. But if there are no Vayne players and you're going Shaco, like Jarvan 3 definitely is on the table, go for it and he's going to do just fine. But do 1-cost reroll for the most part because Shaco's the only guy you care about. So do not level early on or roll early on, and then on stage 3-1 when you're level 4, roll down to 32 gold, pick up your units, and if you have 7 or more copies, roll for Shaco 3. If not, econ back up, slow roll at level 5 every turn until you hit Shaco 3, or until stage 4-1 where you roll until you hit Shaco 3, because that's when this comp really shines. Like you absolutely need 3-star 1-cost on stage 4, because if not, you will lose out to the other people in the late game, so you need to beat them at that time. So the way to win with this comp, because obviously you spike pretty early, like in the mid game when you get the 3-star Shaco, you use that to kind of econ back up and go much higher levels, and then you could fit in a lot of the random legendaries into this comp as well, or a bunch of Divinicorp units to kind of help out and buff out Shaco a little more. Next build up, we're gonna have the Executioner Reroll. So lots of different versions of this. We have the Rengar versions. Obviously, like just play Rengar right now. But if you get Executioner emblem, put it on Jinx, just play like the emblem Jinx build. super duper 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 strong. Jinx is just an absolute monster with this emblem. There's like a bonus that you get from this emblem as well. I forget what it is. Let's check it out. You get ignore 40% of the target's armor and magic resistance. Like that's absolutely bonkers, right? On like a 3-star unit that already does a lot of damage with a lot of crit. And yeah, Jinx goes absolutely wild. Rengar's going to be a pretty good tank. And then you just go like 5 Executioner, 5 Street Demon. But if you don't have the emblem, just do like the 7 Street Demon build. That's going to be the best way to play this right now. The Executioner version also is good, but I just don't like it as much. Because sometimes I feel like you don't have enough tanks in this build, and Rengar isn't like good enough on his own to kind of carry through everything. And for some reason, Varus in this comp does not slap as hard as he does in his Exotech build. I think it's because you just don't have Sejuani, right? Because when you play Exotech, you have Sejuani, and Sejuani kind of cleans up the whole board for you by CCing them for like a couple of seconds. So I prefer the Street Demon build, but you're free to play the Executioner build. It's still fine to play. It's still doable. Like if you get a lot of Vexes, or if you get an early Urgot, or if you get like a ton of Varuses, like definitely go for this. But for the most part, I like the Street Demon version the most. But overall, like this comp is very solid. I like it a lot. It's not like super forceable. It's not like an auto force or anything, but if you get an early Rengar, you could play it with good items. If you get a reroll augment and all the other good rerolls are taken, it's an okay comp to settle for if you have the items for it, because if you have Rage Blade, you go for Vayne or Twisted Fate. If you don't have that, and you have a tier or something like that, you go for Veigar, or you go for Vex. But if you have none of those items, what do you have? You probably have items to build BT Titans, right? So then you just go for Rengar. So that's pretty much when you play this. You go for 3-cost reroll, by the way, because like he's a 3-cost unit, Jinx is a 3-cost, Varus is a 3-cost, and you can itemize Jinx afterwards and then Brand last. The tank items don't matter as much because again, Rengar kind of is your tank in this build. So even though items are nice on like a Nico 2-star, they're not absolutely mandatory. Only do it if you have infinite items. Next build up we have is going to be Street Demons. This is going to be the biggest cap build in the A tier because Street Demons with Strategist still slaps really, really hard. It's just like a weird comp because you need to absolutely win streak with this build. If not, you will get demolished unless you hit everything 2-star during your level 8 roll down. So if you lose streak the whole game from stage 2 all the way to stage 4, level up to level 8, do your roll down, you have like 25 health or something like that. If you miss, you just die, right? So only play this if you are ahead, or if you have like Street Demon augments, such as like Paint the Town or like, what's the other one, like Spray Bottle or whatever, I forget what they're called. But unless you have a very clear direction in Street Demon, or you have a big win streak, do not play it because it's an expensive comp, and if you don't hit everything, you're pretty screwed. But if you do, you're gonna have a very good time. So that's the biggest thing to keep note of when you are playing for Street Demons. You need to be ahead, and then they'll do a lot of work, because if not, like you just die out if you have 1-star everything. And it's very expensive because you have like 3-4 costs that you want: Nico, Ziggs, and Brand. And you could fit in a bunch of legendaries. You want to fit in a bunch of legendaries. Stuff like Viego, stuff like Zac. Garen's really good. You could play Kabuko if you want to play around Bruisers a bit. And he also gives you Cyber Boss. So there's a lot of things to go for, you know, like if you have the emblem, you could put it on whoever you want, but it doesn't really matter who, just any 5 cost will do. And your team is going to be slapping really, really hard. For Brand, Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker going to be the standard build. It just does so much damage. You could put your utility items on Ziggs, such as Morello and Static Shiv. Nico, going to be the main tank, obviously, as the 4-cost tank. And then if you have Samira 2-star, like you might as well itemize her with a bunch of attack damage items if you get a lot of those. So that's kind of nice part about this build. Like Jinx is going to hold the items before that. But I think this build's going to be a little bit better if the meta changes a bit, because I think Exotech's a little more consistent. I'm not saying Exotech is better. I'm saying it's more consistent, because this comp is just kind of risky to do in my opinion. Next build up we have are the B tiers, so that's going to be Misfortune. Not that great, like she's bugged and she also doesn't feel that great either. Leona's not as good as Sejuani in terms of 4-cost tanks if you do like the Vanguard pairing with like 3 Syndicate. Dynamos are good, like Aurora's an incredible unit, but Misfortune just doesn't stabilize you enough before you get to Aurora. And then after that we have Anima Squad. Like Anima's pretty bad unless you get a bonkers start for it, or like one of the very specific Anima augments. So I'd probably skip that for now. Like Golden Ox, it's good if you have like a ton of gold, but unless you have that, it's like not that great. So it's very high rolly. Divinicorp, this is just like a Zed build, but you might as well play the Vex comp instead. Nitrogen, that's going to be this version over here. It's a good comp, don't get me wrong. You could also do like the Nitro Doggy, I think people call it, with Nefari. But unless you hit some insane 3-stars, or you have like Prismatic Ticket or Starry Night, like it's just not worth going for it in my opinion. Tristana, Seraphine, Techie Reroll, they're just better one cost to go for. Don't really want to do that. Also, if you have like a bunch of Shojins and stuff like that, or a bunch of tiers, you'd rather just go Vex or Veigar. But that's pretty much gonna like run down the B tiers down here. You play them rarely. I'm not saying never play them. I'm not saying they're bad. There's always a spot for some comp, right? No matter what it is. But in like 95% of your games, just stick to the A and S tiers. So how would I approach this patch? Well, first, if you get Cypher, go for Cypher. Cash out, go for any comp that caps out late game. If you have a Rageblade start, Vayne or Twisted Fate reroll, depending on what's contested, but Vayne's gonna be a bit better. We forgot to say this at the beginning, but check your Exotech item. Hollowbow equals Zeri. You don't have to do it all the time, but the option is open if everything else is contested or you don't get a good start for anything. And then Hyperfang is gonna be Varus with Vex. If you have a reroll start, such as like Starry Night, things like that, Vayne, Twisted Fate, Veigar, Shaco, Executioner reroll, all viable. If you have attack damage, go for Exotechs. If you have AP, Vex or Street Demon, in terms of like 4-cost builds. That's pretty much all there is to it. There are many other ways to play as well, but this is how I would kind of approach it right now. So let me know down in the comments what you think about this patch. What comps are you going to be running? And whether you're climbing or not, because that's pretty important too. But pretty much if this video helped you out at all, share it with a friend, spread the love a little bit if you want to help me out. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all next time.